Ringo Starr was always the funny Beatle, the one who smiled, joked, and never seemed to take anything too seriously. But behind that friendly face was a life full of pain, chaos, and secrets the public never imagined. At 84, Ringo has finally admitted the truth. His story is not just one of success and joy, but also of addiction, violence, and near-death moments he hid from fans for decades. He wasn't just the drummer who kept the beat. He was a survivor, a man who fought his way back from the edge of collapse. And for many, the real shock isn't the scandals themselves, but how someone so beloved could carry such darkness while the world watched him shine. This is the Ringo Starr story the Beatles never told. Born into hardship, Liverpool's Dingle district, Richard Starkey, later known to the world as Ringo Starr, was born on July 7, 1940, in a cramped house on Madron Street in Liverpool's tough Dingle district. His parents, Richard and Elsie Starkey, worked hard but never had enough. His father left when Ringo was only 3 years old, leaving Elsie to support her family alone. She worked as a barmaid, a cleaner, and did any job she could find to feed her children. Ringo's early life was marked by poverty and instability, and the lack of a father figure shaped his childhood in ways that would later haunt him. But it also made him resilient. Even at a young age, he learned to laugh through hardship, a survival skill that would later become his public persona. His mother protected him fiercely, and he remained devoted to her throughout his life. A childhood of illness that sparked a music career. Ringo's early years were plagued by illness. At age 6, he underwent surgery for appendicitis that went wrong and developed peritonitis, a deadly infection. He slipped into a coma and spent an entire year in hospital recovering. Just as he returned to normal life, tuberculosis struck at age 13. He spent 2 more years in a sanatorium, isolated from school and friends. Yet within that isolation, something unexpected happened. Music. Hospital staff organized music sessions to entertain the children, and Ringo discovered percussion. He learned rhythms by tapping drums and maracas, and for the first time he felt a sense of purpose. When he finally recovered, school no longer mattered. He was behind academically, and at 15, he dropped out, taking factory jobs and drifting like many working-class boys in Liverpool. But the seed of music had already taken root. From skiffle to the stage, Ringo's early bands. In 1957, Ringo joined the Eddie Clayton Skiffle Group, a popular local band. Skiffle was a raw mix of folk, blues, and jazz, played with homemade instruments. Ringo kept rhythm by tapping a thimble on a washboard, but he was quickly recognized for his natural feel. The band played local gigs, including the legendary Cavern Club, where Ringo made his debut on July 31, 1957. That Christmas, his stepfather gave him a real drum kit, simple but life-changing. The skiffle craze faded, and by 1958, Ringo's band broke up. But he didn't stop. In 1959, he joined Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, one of Liverpool's top rock bands. It was there he became Ringo Starr, named after his rings and love of country music. His charisma grew, and he even sang a solo segment called Star Time, giving him a stage presence beyond drumming. The Hamburg Connection, where the Beatles first met Ringo. The Hurricanes toured heavily, including a residency in Hamburg, Germany in 1960. The Beatles were there too, and Ringo often filled in when their drummer, Pete Best, couldn't play. The bands formed a rivalry, but Ringo's talent stood out. On October 15, 1960, he recorded a song with John, Paul, George, and Rory's bassist, Lou Walters, his first time playing with the men who would become his bandmates. The Beatles remembered him, and when they realized they needed a stronger drummer, Ringo became the obvious choice. In August 1962, John and Paul drove to Ringo's home and offered him the job. He hesitated out of loyalty, but he knew the Beatles were destined for greatness. 2 days later, Pete Best was fired. Ringo joined the band, and the Beatles finally had their final lineup, a rocky start. Fans protested. The new Beatle Ringo's entry into the Beatles was far from smooth. Fans loyal to Pete Best were furious. At their first official show with Ringo in Birkenhead, the crowd chanted, "Pete forever, Ringo never." At the Cavern Club, half the audience protested openly. The hostility became violent. George Harrison was punched and even hit by a bus later that day. Despite the backlash, the Beatles stood firm. They knew Ringo's drumming was superior, and his easygoing personality fit the band's chemistry. Slowly, the protests faded as fans realized what Ringo brought, a swing and groove that elevated the Beatles' sound. His presence gave them confidence and stability. In time, even Pete Best admitted the change was justified. With Ringo, the Beatles became unstoppable, the drummer who defined the sound of the Beatles. Ringo's drumming became the backbone of the Beatles' evolution. On Rubber Soul, his rhythm on Norwegian Wood blended perfectly with the band's new folk rock direction. On Revolver, his work on Tomorrow Never Knows was groundbreaking, hypnotic, experimental, and ahead of its time. By Sgt. Pepper, his playing was subtle but essential, especially on With a Little Help from My Friends. His drumming wasn't flashy, but it was always perfect for the song. He also became a rare voice in the band, singing hits like Yellow Submarine and With a Little Help from My Friends. His voice wasn't technically strong, but it was warm, honest, and uniquely his. Those songs became timeless classics, proving Ringo was more than just a drummer. The band breaks apart, Ringo's Crisis. During the White Album, by the late 1960s, the Beatles' unity had collapsed. John Lennon's relationship with Yoko Ono changed the dynamic, and creative tensions grew. During the White Album sessions, Ringo felt isolated. Paul criticized his drumming and even replaced him on Back in the USSR. Ringo felt unloved and left out. It reached a breaking point, and he quit the band, escaping to Sardinia. There he wrote Octopus's Garden, later featured on Abbey Road. The Beatles realized they needed him. They sent telegrams calling him the best drummer in the world and decorated his drum kit with flowers. 2 weeks later, he returned. But the damage was done. The Beatles were already broken behind the scenes. John later privately told the band he was leaving, but business concerns kept the public unaware. By 1970, the band was over. A solo career begins, finding his own voice. Ringo's first solo album, Sentimental Journey, 1970, surprised everyone. It was a collection of standards from the 1940s and 1950s, songs he loved and grew up with. It was a personal tribute to his roots and his mother. The album didn't dominate charts, but it proved he could take risks. Later that year, he released Beaucoup of Blues, recorded in Nashville in 2 days. It wasn't a huge commercial success, but it showed his versatility. His true breakthrough came in 1971 with It Don't Come Easy, co-written with George Harrison. The song became a major hit, proving Ringo could succeed on his own. Then came Photograph in 1973, a song filled with emotional weight, co-written with Harrison, reaching #1 in the US. His 1973 album Ringo felt like a Beatles reunion, featuring contributions from all 3 former bandmates. The dark years, addiction, betrayal, and violence. Behind the success, Ringo's life spiraled. Fame, alcohol, and drugs became his escape. He spent nights in clubs, often waking with no memory of performances. His marriage to Maureen Cox ended in 1975, and he admitted he was absent and unfaithful. the betrayal didn't stop there. George Harrison, his friend and former bandmate, began an affair with Maureen. Ringo was devastated but strangely calm, saying, "Better you than someone we don't know." His life became a blur of excess, and he became part of the notorious Hollywood vampires drinking circle. By the late 1970s, Ringo was no longer just partying. He was losing himself. His addiction began destroying his relationships and his health. Near death and redemption, the turning point. In 1979, Ringo suffered a near-fatal health crisis. Peritonitis returned, and he was rushed to a hospital in Monte Carlo. Emergency surgery removed damaged intestines, and he came close to dying. Just 3 weeks later, he attended Eric Clapton's wedding with Paul and George, a sign of his stubborn determination. But the same year, a fire destroyed his Hollywood home and much of his Beatles memorabilia. These events forced Ringo to confront the life he was living. In 1988, his addiction reached a terrifying climax. Drunk and high, he attacked his wife, Barbara Bach, in a violent rage, destroying their home. The staff feared she might die. The next morning, he had no memory of the incident. It was the moment everything changed. They checked into rehab together, and Ringo began the hard, lifelong journey of sobriety. Rebuilding through music, the All-Star Band. In 1989, Ringo reinvented himself by forming the All-Star Band. The concept was revolutionary. Every musician on stage was a star. The lineup included legends like Joe Walsh, Nils Lofgren, Billy Preston, and Levon Helm. The concerts were a celebration of classic rock, featuring hits from every performer. The band toured the world and became a phenomenon. It was also a new chapter for Ringo, one where he could lead without being trapped by the Beatles' shadow. The All-Star Band became a living testament to his survival. Even decades later, the lineup continued to evolve, with musicians like Peter Frampton and Sheila E. joining the tour. The shows were intimate, joyful, and honest, exactly what Ringo needed to heal. Legacy and the Truth. A life of triumph and darkness. Ringo Starr's life has always been more complicated than the funny Beatle image suggests. He has confessed to violence, addiction, and neglect, truths fans never expected from a beloved icon. He has also endured public backlash, like when he told Liverpool he didn't miss the city, sparking outrage and even vandalism of a Beatles statue. Yet his honesty, especially in later years, has reshaped how we see him. He is not just a drummer, but a man who fought demons and won. His influence on music is now recognized. His drum work has been praised by Phil Collins and Dave Grohl, and he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a solo artist in 2015. His story is proof that even those who seem happiest can carry the heaviest burdens, and that redemption is possible. Outro. The beat goes on. Ringo Starr's life was never simple. He rose from poverty and illness to become a global icon, then fell into darkness and nearly lost everything. Yet he survived, rebuilt, and kept playing. Emotionally, honestly, and with a heart that never stopped beating for music. Today, his story stands as a powerful reminder that fame doesn't erase pain and laughter can hide suffering. The happy Beatle wasn't always happy, but he was always real. And after all these years, he finally told the truth, proving that even the brightest stars can endure the darkest nights and still find their way back to the light.